Everybody say this.
Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
You know that disagree doesn't mean dislike, right? No, really. It's OG time in Houston, Texas, around the country and around the world. Welcome to the Papa Geoff's America podcast. Continuing the conversation one podcast at a time, a conversation about what's going on in America, a conversation about politics, government, world events, stuff and things. With differing points of view, we are all inclusive. Everything from far right to far left and everything in between. Things that you want to talk about with commentary, exhilarating guests, and what would a day be without Papa Geoff's classic old guy humor, right? So with one sort of kind of good eye, a very, some would say, unique sense of humor, and definitely a face for radio, here's Mr. Here We Go himself, the G-Man, PG the OG, Papa Geoff. Hey guys, Papa Geoff here. It's time to continue the conversation. Today is November the 2nd, 2020, the day before the presidential election. And Andrew Wellborn is here with us. He's been with us on the broadcast before. And as you all know, he's an expert when it comes to the political infosphere. Andrew is the host of the 503 Report, a weekly politically based radio show heard in Northern California and nationwide. A great conversation in store for today, and you'll want to join us again this Thursday for hopefully a result, or at least as far as we can tell, based on polls, reporting, etc. Always a great time when Texas and California get together. The Papa Geoff's America program, continuing the conversation, one podcast at a time. It's 70 degrees and sunny at the OG Radio Studios in H-Town, Space City, Houston, Texas, the city with no limits. The 503 reports Andrew Wellborn when we come back. This is the Papa Geoff's America program on the OG Radio Network.
This is the line that'll guide the inaugural parade, that'll bring the next president to the White House to begin to heal the nation. A president elected by the votes of the people, including troops deployed around the world voting by mail, as they have since the Civil War, unless Donald Trump stops those votes from being counted.
It would be very, very proper and very nice if a winner were declared on November 3rd. Instead of counting ballots for 2 weeks.
Tens of millions are voting absentee, ballots that some states won't even start counting until polls close Tuesday. We won't have a final count for days, but the democracy we fought for is worth the wait, because every vote counts, whether it's mailed from a far-off battlefield or a rural mailbox. And when the counting is done, if the president needs help vacating the premises, we'd be happy to walk him out.
Hey, Andrew, what's going on today, man? I know there's a lot happening in your world, and we caught your show on Friday, and a lot happening. I know you got a big Tuesday coming up tomorrow. I got a couple things in notes, but what's going on with you, man? What's happening?
Hey, man. First of all, hello, Houston, Texas, and hello, Texas, and across America on Papa Geoff's America. Andrew Wellborn here from the 503 Report. You know, it's always great to be here. It's always great to talk about this. A month ago, we set up a weekly schedule to begin to talk about what's happening with the elections, try to analyze what's happening and try to bring the best information that we could to your listenership along with my listenership. And here we are, man. It's election eve. I know most of the folks will hear this election day, which is tomorrow, but even though we're doing it today, Monday, coming into election eve, without a doubt, I always look forward to, it's kind of a double-edged sword. On one hand, I look forward to the presidential elections, but at the same time, it reminds me that I'm 4 years older, and I don't like that part of it, Papa Geoff, when it comes to it. But here we are, my friend. Yes, election day is upon us. And it's just kind of crazy for the most part how nobody is, nobody has the courage to step out there and make predictions or to report information that they may or may not have. And it is definitely a most unique election eve that I've ever experienced within my political career, my friend. But election day is upon us, and hopefully the folks are going to get out there and vote. And hopefully the right choice is made by the American people.
I completely agree with you. I have not seen what we're seeing today in, of course, I haven't had a political career, but in the years that I've been voting, since 18 and Wednesday, I'll turn a young 61. And so heading for that, thank you, headed for that Social Security number. We'll see what that's at, but that's a whole different broadcast. But yeah, this is the most action that I've seen and the craziest stuff that I've seen in my short time that's here. And a lot of people have voted. We are personally looking at that issue, I should say, involved in that issue here in Texas. There have been 2 unsuccessful attempts with a third one still in the court right now. I believe we're supposed to have a ruling on it today. It has gone, there I go with the some GOP folks here in Texas have filed cases to do away with the votes that have already been cast in the drive-through voting. And 100 and some thousand votes would be just nullified. And both courts, the last one being the Texas Supreme Court, said that nope. And Harris County believes that they have this on a legal front, that it's not the same as curbside voting. That is the argument that has been from the GOP litigants. And Harris County believes they have the law on their side. And so we're going to see where that goes probably today. That would put me personally and my wife in a situation where if we have an answer on it today and they do throw the votes out, then we will see. I may be going to the polling site tomorrow. And I hope that's definitely not the case, which kind of segues into a question, probably more of a comment on my part, is that if this is a national election, however, it is 50 separate state elections, yes, and states' rights, yes. And that's where my kind of problem is with this, is that the GOP filed their suits and it went to the Texas Supreme Court. In my mind, boom, it's done. Texas Supreme Court has said, no, it's a Texas issue. Not that we're our own country, although some people have said that. Not that we're going to secede, although some people have said that too. But the Texas Supreme Court has said, we're done. But the case is, as we speak, in a federal court. And if we have states' rights, because President Trump he didn't want a federal response to COVID. He wanted it put on the states and the governors, so we would have 50 separate responses. But he has announced that and I know he's anxious, I get it, but he has announced that he wants and will have his attorneys, as soon as the polls close tomorrow night, Tuesday, he will have his attorneys moving forward, going in and doing their thing to, nope, we're not going to count those. And of course, this is just me paraphrasing what's going on because you know a lot more about that. But where do we go with no, this is state, no, this is federal, no, I want an answer right now, no, and that didn't even bring in the situation on the bus, the Biden-Harris bus on Interstate 35. Oh my goodness, that's a whole nother thing. I just watched a thing on Morning Joe, Joe and Mika, about that particular situation, and they brought in several legal experts, and that could be a mess too. And I know that's not President Trump's personal thing that he's doing. However, he kind of did the same thing that he did with the Proud Boys, stand back and stand by, which you and I both know from two-way radio talk that means stand by for what? Stand by for something else coming. And it's kind of like, yesterday it was the folks that did this thing with the bus, which, acting on their own, I'm sure, and they're going to have to answer for it with the FBI doing whatever they're doing. The FBI got trounced by President Trump about they shouldn't be doing that. They should be looking into Antifa. Well, that's his go-to. When there's something he doesn't like, he always goes to the radical left. It's the Democratic governors. But I digress. So we invited you here. I just threw a big mound of stuff at you there, not to put you on the spot, but what is, I'll shut up for now. Tell us what you think.
I love it. That's what makes it so easy, man. You lay out 3 or 4 different points, and it's ironic that most of the things that you laid out is definitely something that I was hoping we'd discuss. So, let's go backwards. Let's start with the Proud Boys. Hopefully we're not comparing the Texas Trump trains to the Proud Boys that nobody ever heard of until a debate that has absolutely zero membership as far as, what they were trying to portray those guys as being a modern day Ku Klux Klan, which has been long disputed. And, hopefully you saw my post. I gave you a little joking post on Instagram.
I saw it. I chuckled.
Hey, let's face it, man, the Trump train, I mean, goodness gracious, I think that we cannot even come close to comparing it to the Antifa. And the words I'm using on this is that is an example of peaceful protest on the highways without obstructing traffic. Unlike what you're seeing across California, unlike what you're seeing across the nation, where protesters are getting on the highways and shutting down interstate commerce, which technically is illegal. And I would say that action is way more illegal than anything that they're trying to accuse this escort. Look, what people need to realize and understand is that bus is fully protected by the Secret Service. And if the Secret Service would have saw a potential threat that they're alleging, I think the Secret Service would have stepped in. As far as any other action, it did not appear that the Trump train across Texas actually interfered with the progress of the bus or traffic at all. At least at this point, I have not seen any video evidence. I can understand Kamala Harris being a little scared. I get it because, quite frankly, she's a coward. But anyways, not to go down the Kamala Harris, Willie Brown thing. But, the reality is that I thought it was funny. And I thought it was a great example of how you protest without obstructing interstate commerce for the most part. So, I had no problem with that. Now, is the FBI investigating? What's the FBI going to investigate, man? I mean, it wasn't like where you've seen people on top of the bridges throwing rocks and bottles towards the Trump trains that go across America, off the bridges towards the boats that are going down the rivers and so on. Give me a break as far as that goes. I think it's a perfect example how you can protest a candidate, and get over it. Quit crying at this stage. you're losing. You know you're losing. Right now, nobody wants to tell the Biden campaign that they're losing. I'm one of the few people that's out there saying that, other than the president himself, that Joe Biden's campaign is losing at this point. All the early voting indicates that he's behind, even though most of the ballots might be Democrat at this point. It's the proverbial, hey, you're blowing your wad at this point. And that's the concern that James Carville has brought up. That's what Michael Moore has brought up in the state of Michigan. And so, yeah, that's my opinion on that. Now, let's go back to your state court thing. You know, that is absolutely one of the biggest issues across America, the 10th Amendment when it comes to federal election. And I just, of the opinion, this is my opinion, Papa Geoff. Always great to be here on Papa Geoff's America. This is just my opinion. I'm not a lawyer. But I don't think the federal election should be a state right when it comes to electing the president. I don't think that the state should have the right to set up a similar statewide election process like they do for local and statewide elections versus the federal presidential election, because we're a republic. And that's the big concern we have right now, is the inconsistency of the states. That state right issue on a republic federal issue, you understand what I mean? I'm separating the two here. If you're going to elect your governor and you want to set up the ballot process to elect your governor, your state legislature, your county, your cities, okay. But I think there should be a federal consistency when it comes to electing United States congressional representatives, U.S. senators, and of course the president and vice president of the United States. And I think that no matter what, the courts are ruling correctly at this point because there is no federal mandate. And the state Supreme Courts are winning. So I think that the state Supreme Court in the state of Texas is going to retain its decision, just like in Pennsylvania and just like other state Supreme Courts, meaning that the federal courts and the United States Supreme Court really are not going to interfere because there is no federal mandate. And a lot of the Supreme Courts are coming back with rulings similar to the one in Pennsylvania. Look, there's no legislative requirement for this, so they're going to reject the appeal. And in Pennsylvania, it has to do with signature verification. And there is no signature verification, which, you know, sets up the history, the long history. Let's be honest here. The long history of voter fraud that comes out of Philadelphia, just like it does Chicago, and just like it does New Jersey, and other cities and other states across America. Unlike California, where there is a signature verification requirement, and which is why the state of California is panicking right now. The Secretary of State of California, Alex Padilla, is desperately putting the message, just sign it the way you signed your driver's license, because the state of California has got mandatory automatic voter registration when you get your real ID. So with that being said, yeah, it is a state right at this point in time. I think that the Texas Supreme Court is going to be correct in the ruling based on the lack of legislative restriction, because there is none. And with all this being said, I'm absolutely a proponent of making it as easy as possible for people to vote. And, you know, when it comes to voter suppression and all this other stuff that happens, you know, the reality is that I like what's going on across America to this point, Papa Geoff. And it has to do with the amount of early voting right now might be record in form of early voting. But only the state of Texas has surpassed its normal vote. But the state of Texas traditionally has got a low vote turnout, you know, in comparison to its population, just like the state of California has a relatively low voter turnout in relation to its statewide population. So to see the voter turnout be a little bit bigger because of early voting, at this point in time, as long as they are normal registered voters, I don't see the problem at this point. I think most of us anticipate massive voter fraud coming out of the inner cities of Philadelphia, which could turn Pennsylvania. But at the same time, man, early reports show panic within the Democrat Party on the national level because the African-American vote, quote unquote, is not showing up at the levels that they needed to show up at this point. And if it hasn't shown up at this point, it definitely, traditionally and historically, does not show up on voting day. Same in Florida, same in some of the big counties in Florida. The drop-off is causing panic, especially amongst the likes of James Carville. And then, of course, Michael Moore, understanding Michigan, realizes that, hey, the polls are incorrect in Michigan. So what's crazy about this election day, and what a lot of us political scientists and professionals in the business is going to be our ability to look back and learn. But the problem with looking back and learn is because so much is on the line with this election. Normally, we would be exciting to see new voting trends, new voting models. But because the voting trend and model is really comes down to socialism versus freedom, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what makes it kind of not so exciting to watch. And that's what's keeping everybody on the edge. I mean, goodness gracious, in the history of our nation, I mean, we've seen the protests at national conventions in the 60s. But when we see cities beginning to prepare for bringing in National Guard because of these groups that might not like the election results in the name of this peaceful transfer of power, these individuals are the hypocrites. And when we're seeing our nation prepare for election results in the same manner that third world countries do or Soviet blocs do, come on, man. Come on, man.
Yeah, I think you're right. Not to make a joke about the wall, but to make a joke about the wall, the same type of structure that was put up during the protest time several months back as a result of the Black Lives Matter George Floyd Minneapolis issue is now being erected around the White House for blocks and blocks and blocks. And of course, there's that side that's taking up that President Donald Trump is playing the Les Miserables card and he's going to barricade himself in. That's not what I'm thinking, but I agree with you. There's gonna be some stuff. There is on both sides. There's gonna be some stuff. There's some people that are very much radical. And there's some not so radical, and I don't consider you and I radical at all. You're educated in it. I'm more opinionated in it, but that doesn't make us. That makes us U.S. citizens. That's what we're supposed to do. It is a civic duty. I was speaking to someone the other day who has a relative that is 66 years old and hasn't voted yet, and I almost lost it. And
why
hasn't voted yet? And I know it's a right to vote. It's a right to not vote. It's and I had caught what you said, on your program the other day that and I know where you were going with it is if you have received an absentee or a non-solicited ballot and you're not going to vote, that's certainly your right not to vote, but get rid of the ballot just so it doesn't get into the mix. I totally get that. But this person hasn't voted since, and they're 66. And I'm just thinking, oh my God. And to me, that means you don't have a say in anything now. You cannot come back and say, well, they should have done this and they should have done that. No, wait a minute. You didn't do your part. So, I don't want to say your opinion doesn't matter, but your opinion doesn't matter because you didn't do your part of what's going on. And so it's crazy stuff. I know, yep, the FBI is going to do what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to do with the bus. I don't know. I hear what you're saying as well, and I agree with what you're saying about the throwing stuff off of bridges and things like that and blocking traffic and such. And I can speak to both sides of that, both of those particular issues, having been a medic in an ambulance, driving that ambulance, trying to get someplace in a hurry, and haven't been able to get there, not because of protesting on the road, but just because of traffic gets bad or whatever. And if you're blocking the road and I'm trying to get somewhere, you're not really hurting me. You're hurting your fellow citizen that's waiting for me to get there. And I'm not going to drive, back in the day, I'm not going to drive crazy just so that I can get there and hurt me, because that just makes it a whole lot worse, and the person that's in trouble has to wait even longer. And even back to the bus driving days, which I did that for almost 20 years, both with school buses and with charter buses. And granted, I wasn't the guy driving the Biden bus. Um, I could imagine how that driver may have felt. But it's just people are passionate, I guess. The nicest way possible. People are passionate about what's going on. But you've got a big.
I don't like to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I don't like to interrupt, as you know, but I got to stop on that. That driver, I mean, that wasn't a school bus driver driving elementary schools. It was just hired by the Biden campaign. And let's get real, folks. That driver was a Secret Service agent that's very, very professional at driving. What people need to realize is that the Secret Service covers that bus. The Secret Service is protecting that bus. And that driver was more than capable of making that bus probably do some stuff that you would never think that bus could do. So let's get real on the bus part with the poor driver, because the driver is a professional individual. Know that, as we say on my program. Anyways, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine, and I think that's something that I know I didn't know, is that because neither candidate was reportedly aboard the bus, that law enforcement agency is tasked with protection of that staff and that vehicle, and that's a good thing to know that. And yes, they are trained in evasive driving and such. That's great. That's good stuff. And I think perhaps stuff got a little bit, people got a little bit maybe excited, passionate, shall we say, and we'll see what comes of it. Likely with how fast our news cycle goes, not even a 24-hour news cycle anymore, probably not going to hear too much more about it. It's going to live on TikTok longer than it's going to live within our news cycle. You jump in anytime. Go ahead.
One last comment on that. I mean, if the Secret Service would have deemed it a threat, the barricades would have been set up a mile up the road for the purpose of getting that bus through. I mean, they would have come in. The Texas Highway Patrol would have zoomed in, came on the off ramps. It's just a basic maneuver in traffic to let traffic go forward and to cut that bus out of traffic. The Texas Highway Patrol, along with the California Highway Patrol, these guys are very much so trained how to isolate a vehicle for the purpose of a freeway security chase. And had that bus really been deemed a threat, had there been a threat on that bus, Texas, and I think most Texans understand this, and that would have been stopped immediately. It would not have gone on as long as it did. Just speaking from a law enforcement point of view.
No, I agree. You can speak to that. I cannot. You can even speak to the many more years of driving in Texas than I can, because it's crazy here. It's just crazy here. We all joke that Houston's an hour away from Houston. It really is. You can't get anywhere hardly. And if you're driving 70 in a 40, you're not speeding. You're not even going the flow of traffic. It's just crazy. My two daughters are 15 and 17.
Hey,
welcome to Texas.
Californians moving in there, man.
Oh my gosh, stop coming here. Granted, that's not fair to say. I did that too. I came from California to Texas only with a 15-year stop layover in Nevada. But I ended up here. But the daughters are working on getting permits and learning to drive, because the 17 is going to be in college next year, and she's a little bit later in learning how to drive compared to how most kids are. And, we're looking at driving schools to give them the training that they need. I should actually get them under the Secret Service course. It's probably not even possible, so that they can learn evasive driving, because that's what you need to know here in Houston. But no, we're dealing with that because it's crazy here in Texas. But just speaking of crazy, you got a big deal coming up tomorrow with your program and your colleagues and your election coverage, having called the 2016 ahead of any other national network. You got big
Yeah, we're
stuff
pretty
coming.
proud.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, we're pretty proud of that. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, it's a claim to fame that's on the record, and eventually I'm going to use that, hopefully, or may not use that, to take a different path in life. It just really remains to be seen what the outcome's going to be. Yeah, we're doing our coverage like we always do. We're going to have 3 people in studio. We're going to have a good friend of ours kind of calling in and giving us, they're going to be monitoring Southern California. What's going to be interesting is, um, San Diego County, Orange County, and even portions of LA County, those counties down in that southern region, as you're aware of. It's going to be interesting how close it may be. Now, I'm not going to go on the record to say that California is going to go red, but I tell you, I think California is going to give the Democrats a run for the money in the state of California at this point, based on enthusiasm, based on techniques that the Republicans out here in the state of California are using against the Democrats, based on the techniques that the Democrats used against the Republicans 4 years ago. And the Republicans are always better at it when it comes to the ground game, once they understand what the rules are to play the ground game. So it's just going to be interesting to watch. But yeah, I'll have the president of the California Broadcast Association, Mr. Joe Barry, is going to be with Chris Montgomery and I from the morning show, Fired Up Friday, and of course myself, Fired Up Friday in the 503 Report. And the original founder with me on the 503 Report, Tim Rock and Rhino Reinerson, is going to be down in Southern California watching the county clerk sites as reportings come in. Rather than to watch it on statewide, we're going to try to do it live as good as we can and try to watch as much as we can. Of course, we have our local coverage within Northeastern California, along with what's happening nationally. But yeah, we're going to be watching. We learned something cool 4 years ago, and that was how to watch the Secretary of State's office of various states. So we'll have them. We'll have North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada. We're going to watch real close. Papa Geoff, I think I'm the only person that's really kind of watching Nevada as closely as I am. I think it may be in play a little bit more than most analysts are looking at. And it's real simple. The president has got more pathways to victory than he did as the candidate 4 years ago. And that's what makes it a little more easy for me to wake up tomorrow, watch the numbers come in, early voting numbers, whether or not the Democrats already voted versus the traditional polling day, election day, where the Republicans normally come out a whole lot more. So all this information that's going to come in, seeing the ballots counted on election day, it's going to be pretty exciting to watch. But at the same time, I don't think a lot of the states are battlegrounds at this point. I don't think Texas is in play for the Democrats. I'm sorry, my friend. I don't think Florida's in play for the Democrats. And I don't think Georgia is in play. North Carolina, I think, will probably go red. But let's just say North Carolina stays blue. Let's just say that Georgia flips. And let's say Pennsylvania flips. Wisconsin stays red. Michigan stays red, which is an indicator at this point. That's what makes Nevada crucial at this point. Because Nevada's 6 electoral votes, if Nevada goes red, the president can lose Pennsylvania, which I'd be surprised if the president wins Pennsylvania again because of the traditional voter fraud that comes out of Philadelphia. And let's say he does lose Georgia, which I'm not sure that he's going to lose Georgia. If he loses those 2 states and loses North Carolina and maintains every state that he has already won on his last election and flips Nevada back red, he's president for 4 more years. It's really just that simple.
Yeah, I know that I'm not all that familiar with the Pennsylvania voter fraud issue. I know you are, and because you've done this for so many years. I know that Mr. Trump, President Donald Trump, has spent basically the last days there, a lot of different visits there, and he's definitely focused on that, and I can certainly understand that. We'll just have to see where that goes. What do you think about this? Because you had just said that you don't really believe that Florida is going to flip to blue. What do you think about this? Because we're hearing all of the MSNBCs and the CNNs and that side, if you will, are saying that if Biden wins Florida, it's all over. Do you concur with that? Do you think there's any other path around that for President Trump?
No, I mean, the president can lose Florida, still win Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, win Georgia, win North Carolina, flip Nevada, red, and then, of course, maybe on a long shot, flip Minnesota. And so, no, Florida is not definitely – Florida makes it tougher for the president to win. It's not – I mean, Florida traditionally – I have to give a little history, and I'll make it brief. If that's
no,
okay.
Please.
You know, I refer to it as the fool's gold of polling for presidential campaigns. See, Florida and North Carolina, Florida more so, went blue with President Obama. The bottle is set based on President Obama. And let's just be real with President Obama. McCain definitely was not somebody that any of the conservatives were and Republicans were excited about, which is kind of ironic that they're reaching out to the McCain family. If anything, that's going to energize the Republicans to really get out because people hate McCain as Republicans. Most Republicans will argue successfully that it was Sarah Palin that even made that, even a campaign. If John McCain had not put Sarah Palin, then he probably would have lost by larger margins. Most political historians understand that. And then the Mitt Romney effect with President Barack Obama. No matter how we look at it, no matter how we like it, the reality is that the evangelical vote dropped off with Mitt Romney, meaning that the Christians did not show up to support the Mormon. Let's just call it what it was. And so it gives us false sense of security thinking that Florida is going to possibly be blue. And it has to do with the Democrats' consistent mistake of trying to misconstrue Hispanics and not differentiating Hispanic votes versus Cuban votes, the African American versus the Caribbean American votes that are down there. And they just kind of like clump them all into one, group of individuals, and they don't. The demographics are very different, which gives the false sense that Florida is in play. But traditionally, and if you think about it, everybody was excited because, the Hispanic vote is out huge in Florida. Florida is going to go for Hillary Clinton. Well, they're doing the same thing. They haven't learned a lesson about the difference between Hispanic voters and Cuban voters. And the Democrats are not going to win over the Cuban voters, especially with socialist policies that support the Castro regime in Cuba. And that creates the false sense of movement in the state of Florida. And so that's why I look at that, for the most part. President Barack Obama was just an anomaly in American history, meaning that he was our first Black president, and a lot of people voted twice for history. And reality was, and I'm on the record saying that too, that, look, America is not going to make America's first Black president a one-term president, regardless of how they feel. And maybe if the Republicans would have ran somebody other than Mitt Romney, that might be a different statement. But everything lined up to that effect. And I think the Democrats are just not seeing it correctly, which, they champion Florida as being their opportunity. But traditionally, Republicans have looked at Wisconsin historically in the same way. Mitt Romney's campaign looked at Wisconsin as being the path to victory. And it's the fool's gold of voting, meaning that white male voters who traditionally don't show up poll and say they're going to show up to vote, but they don't. Well, when the Trump campaign did that in 2016, I got a little concerned, like, oh my gosh, it's over. Thinking the same thing. But the difference is that white male voter, that blue collar conservative crossover, maybe Democrat voter, showed up to vote for President Donald Trump. And that's where the Democrats have really lost a little game, is the conservative middle class. I don't want to say white male voter, but let's just call it the middle class. And the Democrats, because of the socialist takeover of the party, has really focused on college. And they've done a great job indoctrinating the young minds. And those young minds, unfortunately, are going to show up to vote. And I call them the stupid voters. And we don't need them to vote for the first time because they don't know anything other than what they have been indoctrinated in by Marxist professors in whatever university that they have attended. And that's going to be the impact, I think. That's really going to be the new demographic going into the next round of elections, the future of elections, the impact of the Marxist educated young Democrat. And then it's going to come down to individuals like you. Not saying that you're a Democrat, but other friends of mine that are Democrats, and you have to make a choice. So it's going to be interesting to see how many Democrats, this is what we don't know, Papa Geoff, what I'm about to say. What we don't know until Election Day is how many of the early ballots that have been casted are Democrat crossovers. Because people don't traditionally, three things people don't do, especially in the state of Texas. Number one, we don't change our football teams overnight. Number two, we don't change our religion overnight. Number three, we definitely don't change our politics overnight as far as what party we support. But on the latter, we do tend to cross over with candidates in politics from time to time without changing our party registration. So it's going to be interesting to see what that effect that I just explained is going to be. And I think there's going to be a lot. So when we looked at the state of Nevada right now, this is what's crazy, man. I mean, the margin of early ballots at this point is like 38 to 34, Democrat versus Republican, with a huge 25% decline to state. And with that ballot being that close, and you take a look at just a small portion of the possibility of Democrat crossover and a large portion of no party preference and going Republican, which normally sometimes happens. That's how the state swings. It swings because no party preference comes out a little larger than normal. And if that no party preference is as excited as we're seeing in the state of Nevada, that's why I'm watching Nevada as close as it could be. Because right now, most of us that analyze that looks at that as being a victory for the president, which is why you don't hear any media coverage at this point for the state of Nevada.
Right. Well, it's going to be interesting. The best is yet to come. We'll see what happens, and we. When does your coverage? Because I, in case our friends here in Houston want to follow your, just kind of give us a wrap up of how do they follow your coverage and you and your colleagues' coverage tomorrow. How do they do that?
All right, two things I want to kind of look. If you want to follow me on my radio program, just find me on 503 Report on Facebook. Just 503 Report Facebook. That's how you can follow me on Fridays. Give me a like, give me a follow. And then if you don't like what we're talking about, you can unlike us, unfollow us. That's fine. But the coverage that you're talking about would be at SierraDailyNews.com. SierraDailyNews.com. And, it's an outdated website. It's not what we're used to. It's just, an old little hokey-dokey little radio station up here in the mountains of northeastern California. But it should be easy to follow as far as catching the stream. And what's kind of cool is that a lot of our audience up here will listen to our coverage, but have Fox News on or MSNBC on or however they want to do it. But they got it muted. But they listen to us, but they watch the other boys, the boys and girls, because of how we cover it versus everybody else. We're not afraid to go out there and tell people what's happening. But yeah, if you want to tune in, we'd appreciate the heck out of that. Like I said, one more time, Sierra, Sierra, dailynews.com.
Absolutely. We have in Papa Geoff's America, we have an international audience. We have folks that have listened to us from Ireland. We have folks that have listened to us from France, from Italy. I actually have a interview scheduled with a new podcast friend who lives in China, and we have a interview scheduled. What would be Wednesday night for me would be Thursday morning for him. So I'm actually going to be speaking to tomorrow. And that would be that'll be kind of interesting. So yeah, we do have an international audience, guys. If you want to check in, like Andrew said, follow him. He knows what's going on. I put the dramatic twist on it. He puts the reality to it. SierraDailyNews.com. Check it out. Andrew and I will have more as we move on with what's going to happen here. Vote if you haven't. If you want to, you need to. Every vote counts. Take it personal, but don't take anything too personally. Careful when you're driving here in Texas. And yeah, great interview. Andrew, anything you want to add before we conclude here?
Yeah, you know what, folks, it's been a crazy election year, but no matter what the outcome is, just be peaceful. This is the proudest moments that we have in America is every 4 years when we show the peaceful transfer or maintenance of power. You know, our revolutionaries have been fought on the battlefield throughout history. You know, this is not the time for us to get out there and get crazy and be angry and burn and destroy. But that those groups are going to be there. But, you know, we need to be vigilant as citizens and maybe step up to these organizations, not just rely on the police. Maybe it's up to us to be courageous, even though we don't have a history of being as courageous as the myth claims, you know, all the way from the Tory days to the resistance of World War I, World War II, all the way. So, but it's time for us to be very, very courageous as a nation. And these small little groups, and that's what they are, these little soy boys and girls out there wearing the black mask who don't even understand what the word Antifa means, probably can't even spell it, much understand what fascist means. You know, we need to be able to step up to them and say, go back to your mom's basements and get out of the process, because you are harming what is great about America, which is our peaceful transfer or maintenance of power. And for your international audience that might want to tune in, that's a great plug. I really appreciate that. Just realize, man, we're just a couple good old boys up here in the mountain, man. We're hokey dokey pokey. You know, we're not as clean and as fresh and as professional as you're used to on the big boys and girls. But however, we would do something a little bit different than the big boys and girls. We'll tell you how it's going and how it is.
And it's also how radio should be, is because if there's a oops or an ooh or an ah or a click or a pop or a whatever, it's there. It's for history. And not everything gets edited out and smoothed out and equalized out. And that's what live television was so amazing, because you were just on, and that's how it is. And a lot of that stuff it's around and we can do it. So radio, how it should be. And I certainly appreciate it. Guys, you've got all the information. Andrew Wellborn has been our guest today. SierraDailyNews.com to follow his election coverage starting tomorrow. And for the 503 report, you can follow him, like him, follow him, worship him on Facebook. And he's a good guy. Been friends for a long time, and we certainly appreciate him coming on. Guys, stay with us. We're going to be back in just a minute. This is the Papa Geoff's America Show, podcast, etc., on the OG Radio Network. Thank you for joining us today for the Papa Geoff's America program. The Papa Geoff's America program is recorded in Houston, Texas at OG Studios and is a production of the OG Radio Network. Check out more episodes of our podcast at PapaGeoffUSA.com, and please subscribe at subscribe.PapaGeoffUSA.com or wherever you get your podcasts. We're on all the major platforms. Your home for Papa Geoff's America is our website at PapaGeoffUSA.com. That's where you can check out more episodes of our podcast, check out the OG blog, contact us, and link to all of our social media. We want to hear from you. Your thoughts, comments, and suggestions are what make this program go. So you can send us an email on our website, or you can call or text us at 940-6980. Message and data rates may apply. Remember to wear a mask, stay home if you can, social distance if you can't stay home, wash your hands frequently, and take care of each other. And always, always, always practice. Disagree doesn't mean dislike. Thanks again for joining us. We're looking forward to seeing you next time when we continue the conversation, one podcast at a time.